Odd Rogue going down on the other side. I think Odd Rogue has become the poster child for the aggro strategy. We've said the words Odd Rogue a lot over the past 2 weeks, where we've meant just like generic play minion aggro strategies. But there's a reason it's the poster child, and that's because it's perhaps the most powerful option for doing that kind of thing.
Yep, and first game that we're going to be having here, Togwaggle Druid versus Tom's Even Warlock. That's going to be coming up here with Ryvius going to be on Togwaggle Druid. And this is a deck that, you know, towards the Raskon's Rumble being released, a deck that I played a ton leading up to that because I ended up hanging out on BlizzCon weekend with Rage, and we just jammed combo decks the entire time. And Togwaggle was the one that we had of particular interest, but I'm quite surprised to be seeing it over the Mechathroon Druid and, you know, the power that deck yields. Do you have a take on this right now? Because I feel like this is a deck that's been almost extinct as far as the metagame's concerned.
Yeah, I mean, my take is that I pretty much agree with what you just said. I think Mechathroon Druid is something that you'd expect to see a little bit more of, especially even Ryvius has history, I believe, of bringing Mechathroon Druid to a tournament. When I picked him, it was because I thought he had this genius lineup where he'd just kind of thrown in these Mechathoons into a couple of his decks to really give him consistency and insurance against a couple of the counter strategies that he could come up against. So seeing him divert from that and stick Mechathoon in just his Warlock, whereas switching to the Togwaggle with the Druid is equally surprising to me.
Yeah, I'm looking at Ryvius and his past successes. You know, we're looking at he was 3rd in points for the regional points race this year. Had a top 12 back in the Fall Championship and was 2nd place at the Tour Stop in Bangkok and top 8 at the Tour Stop that happened in Tokyo. And you mentioned it, the playoffs where he brought the Mechathroon lineup. Yep. That's just what we had to call it because that's what it was. And that's how he qualified for a championship. He's facing off against Even Warlock right now. And, you know, Tom's in one of those positions where this is the spot where, as Druid, you either hate to be or you love to be because you either have the answer to the big minion or you don't have the answer to the big minion. And I have found often if Ryvius is going to have that answer in this spot, it's looking pretty good for him.
I can definitely see that, yeah. There are a few threats to follow that up from Tom, and I think he's just considering sequencing of said threats, like whether he can be cheeky and try and get out a Naturalize on a smaller minion than the Mountain Giant. Also the consideration of whether to tap Giant here or not, based on the consideration of Naturalize, then overdrawing you cards. And some multiple options for our still reigning world champion in Tom60229.
Yeah, and honestly, this is a really important turn because of that. I have found in my time playing Even Warlock against Druid that the burns you're a little bit less fearful of. Your life total, you do need to be mindful of it, but I'm not sure how much the tap really influences the outcome in terms of getting to 15 health and playing your Hooked Reaver. The math on tapping that many times, you're still not going to be in the 15 range by the time you get to an 8-mana turn, where Tom has Lich King already. So if he's paying extra life for the sake of paying extra life, it ends up being a moot point at the end of the day.
Ryvius just playing his curve here, dropping Ironwood Golem just to prevent the 8 damage, does not want to throw out his own Naturalize. He wants to, A, be as greedy of those as possible so he can use them in more desperate situations later, or B, use them actually as part of his own win condition when it comes down to that Togwaggle deck swap, because using Naturalize, you can make your opponent overdraw fatigue cards and just use that to burst damage when you swap decks at the end of the game.
Yeah, a very common thing that used to happen in this matchup as well was that Even Warlock had different tech for various reasons. You know, Mossy Harbor or a Shadow Flame were quite necessary in the deck for the ability to actually push through Spreading Plague.
Sure. And
at times even Giggling Inventor back before it was changed to 7 mana. And that's no longer the case. Tom does have a copy of Nerubian Unraveler as his one flexible option in Even Warlock. And without having access to Mossy Harbor, I feel like that Ryvius' line here really ends up paying off in the long term. He gets to just tank damage with his cards via Iron Golem, and then at some point land a Spreading Plague to absorb a lot of damage and unlock an important turn.
Yeah, and I think just having that curve available to him with like minimal fill-in in the middle, like if he needed to spend one turn just gaining armor with branching paths, if he really had to, then sure, he can just do so, with Spellstone in hand as well to use his removal. But having drawn the second Ironwood Golem, he's just going to continue doing what brought him to the dance, and that's just play out minions. But this was a lot more threatening situation for Tom to be able to push damage through this.
Yeah, the other issue I'm seeing here is that Ryvius has actually drawn the Ironwood Golems rather than the open summons. Yeah. So that's 2 cards in the deck that are just troublesome from Ryvius to cast, and that means 2 extra cards in the deck in total because the Oaken Summons isn't pulling them from your deck. So it is a little bit more legwork to do if Ryvius is going to get to the end of the deck and use that Togwaggle Azalina combo to swap the decks, then copy the hand from Tom.
Yep.
The goal is to strip away Tom's deck in totality, but you have to strip away the minions first. And I love Tom's line here.
I do too. I wanted to comment because you picked up the Dread Inferno originally. It's like, yeah, okay, sure. You don't get to push much damage here. The 1 damage AoE doesn't really change your breakpoints as to what trades into the 3/6. I can understand wanting to get another 6 attack minion on board because of the threat of exactly this spreading play coming down. But when you just weigh up the option of push 14 or don't push 14, it becomes a very simple equation, I think.
I think so as well. Spellbreakers and even Warlock are largely there to just break a taunt and connect with Mountain Giant and you know, various other big minions that you'll have in play.
Right.
And Tom's doing just that. Not only that, holding on to the Dread Infernal means that the Twilight Drake or the Spellbreaker, they actually break through a couple of these taunts when they attack.
They sure do. Let's have Hellfire options here, which would enable him to push a lot more damage, get the Mountain Giant through, but without Axe. If this was an 8-mana turn and he could Hellfire and perhaps heal up that Mountain Giant again afterwards, that might look more appealing, but it's probably just too much AoE to your own board in this spot.
I would definitely think so. That's a good spot to know when you should and should not be AoEing as well.
Right.
The more minions you have in play, the more difficult a Hellfire is going to look against you.
That attack, the arrow there of the 2/4 into the 1/5 is somewhat suggestive of that Hellfire play happening, though.
I'm looking more at the Sun Fury double trading with the 2s. Setting up as a variable 4. Looks like Tom's going to do this first and just take a gander at the board. Help him visualize. He knows that's where he's going. Oh, it's been a while, I feel like, since I've seen that card.
He's still around. High Legend Ladder right now is actually there's a lot of like Hakar Druid and other various things around right now. People are still, you know, claiming that it's a very, very strong deck in the metagame. But again, Ryvius with this just straight up Togwaggle build. A little unusual to be seeing.
The circle of life is over.
Spellstone upgrades from the Malfurion. Takes out a Dread Infernal. And suddenly all these 1/5s are softening board positions. They're extending Ryvius's life. And this was all even without directly answering a Mountain Giant, but Tom draws Blood Reaver Gul'dan. And that's going to be major reload for his push. There is currently a Dread Infernal and a Vulgar Homunculus in the pool already. And I'm looking at a Hooked Reaver that can potentially get in there before this Gul'dan comes down as well.
Sure can. And the pressure isn't going to let up anytime soon for Tom. It's turn 8, and Lich King is green. There's Bone Mare possibilities here as well. You know, Lich King is almost always going to be good, whereas you're not always going to have a board state like this to be able to consolidate a Bone Mare on.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point to make. Because one of the things to take into account is that Tom he didn't see Naturalize on his early Mountain Giant.
Right.
He didn't see that Spellstone until way deeper into the game. And Lich King, once you get Blood Reaver Gul'dan down, is your one opportunity to keep generating cards in the meantime. I love the Bone Mare here. I think it just creates an overall stronger board position. And then you get to follow up how you'd like into Blood Reaver Gul'dan into Lich King. It's, you know, long turns of setup that, you know, the variables can change. But Lich King is often, it's better as your final threat than it is, I think, as your first one.
First draw off the branching does pick up the Spellstone. So the armor now can give Ryvius some removal options. But he's really being forced in this position now where he can't just sit around and remove minions forever. He does have to use some of these cards to draw because that is the goal of his deck. That is his win condition. He needs to get down as low as possible in his deck, swap over a bunch of garbage to Tom, and hopefully fatigue on the other side.
And Ryvius, the fact that he has not used the Naturalizes by this point tells me he's very interested in an empty deck swap into Naturalize for the burn damage. When your opponent has no deck and you can double Naturalize, from their turns draw as well, they end up taking 15 total points of fatigue damage.
But if anything's going to test Ryvius's resolve, it's this Lich King that comes down right now, because not only does it need to be answered, it's also multiple cards burned for Tom. Not that that's likely to have a huge impact with the draw that Tom already has Gul'dan in his hand, already has demons in the pool. But yeah, that boy's just got to go. You can't just let that Lich King hanging around on board.
Also has yet to see Togwaggle or Azalina. You know, the longer it sticks around, the more a threat of a Death Grip disrupting that combo becomes a real thing.
Well, rip the tech card. Didn't need it anyway. Game did you a favor, Tom.
Stops him from playing Ultimate Infestation, though.
It sure does. That's a great point.
Another card I feel like I haven't seen in quite a while.
Ryvius probably thinking exactly the same thing. Right now.
All the minions that cost 4 or less have been pulled away from Ryvius' deck in the natural draw. Those 2 Oaken summons are straight up gain 6 armor.
There's a spicy play coming out from Tom. Deals 3 damage to his own Twilight Drake just for the luxury of being able to play a 7/7 this turn. Does not want to slow down one bit. Back this up with the huge Blood Reaver turn after this. But from Ryvius' side, like every time I watch Druid now, it just feels so fair. And you don't want a deck that feels fair. I've lost so much faith in the Druid class. It was so dominant for so long, but it was a class that was primarily based around cheating out mana, just getting ahead of your opponent, being able to do more powerful things than they could do. Ryvius has had a 6-mana Nourish in his hand this entire game. It's just been too expensive for him to be able to spend it on ramp.
I definitely feel like that Ryvius is hitting a point where he might be getting past the super danger zone, though. I mean, Tom has Blood River Gul'dan, has Army of the Damned. Ryvius still has Spreading Plague and a Branching Pass there, though.
Right.
He has a Naturalize for this Hooked Reaver. The time that he sees Tom play Blood River Gul'dan, you get that big swing turn of the Spreading Plague plus the Branching Pass, which is just a ton of health and a ton of ways to fight on board because of that. Ryvius, you know, I think it is a couple turns away still for him. You know, it's going to be hard to get through his deck and assemble this. But I think he's really close to making that turn happen.
Does find the UI now. Oaken Summons is going to do nothing apart from gain that 6 armor. So now facing down 13 on the board. And Tom is going to pull the trigger now on this Gul'dan board, which is going to summon back, crucially, a big 6/6, which is not going to be locked out by a Spreading Plague. That 2/4 is as much of a liability as it is helping out Tom right now.
Ryvius choosing to use the Oaken Summons over the Naturalize too. This is also a deck where your hand size matters, and you need to, you know, use as much of your stuff as you can.
Yeah.
And so, utilizing your mana properly is a very real thing. And if he naturalizes that Hooked Reaver, it's coming right back to the Gul'dan. And so I think that was part of the big reason Ryvius chose to hold that.
Plus attack on the Scarab Beetles here means that just Hellfire is only 1 away from doing the job. And Defile Hellfire, in fact, is going to be able to push everything through. Yep, it's going to do the job. Ryvius just needed far too many turns there. We mentioned he hadn't drawn his Azalina or his Tog yet, so he just saw Azalina come into play, but that's the turn he died. After that, he needed to find a turn to play Florist at some point without dying when he was out of Spreading Plagues. He then needed to have a turn where he gets the deck swap done without dying. Like, for me, he was still a lot of turns away from making something